Morning, everyone. We'll just wait a couple of minutes for more people to join. All right. So welcome, everyone, to our webinar today on digital twins across product design, validation, and virtual patients. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Virginia. Thank you. So when I joined APACMed about a year ago, we were just organizing our first webinar on digital twins, how digital twins are accelerating medtech. And we had the three same great speakers that we will have with us today. So Christian Davis, Virginia Chan, and Juliana Young. So last year when we had the webinar, the Digital Health Committee was only a few months old, and we were counting about 30 company members and 100 individual members. And if you go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So now we count over 70 companies in the committee. So they go from startups to bigger multinational. And we have over 200 individual members. So the committee is growing, the digital sphere is evolving, and I'm really pleased today to have this second edition of the webinar with you to discover more on the digital twins and what's new since last year. So if you go to the next slide, please. So just some technical instructions. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat function. We will have a Q&A section toward the end of the webinar, and our speakers will be happy to answer any questions you'd have. So I will leave the floor to Juliana now, and I hope you will learn a lot during this hour together. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Next slide, please, Virginia. Good morning, everyone. So last year, Virginia and Christian introduced to us really the big topic of the next industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, which is digital twins. As you can see on this diagram here, it's basically moving all the physical assets that we have in the physical world, getting data on all of them, and then putting them in the cyber world, and then creating twins or digital twins of these physical assets. And then so this year, with me again being the moderator, Virginia and Christian are going to be back and show you more examples of digital twins, and as well as how this revolution is accelerated by COVID-19. So again, I'm Juliana Young from Fresenius Medical Care, and then the presentation will start with Virginia Chan from Siemens Healthineers to show you some of the examples of digital twins. And then to you, Virginia.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, Cindy, for this great opportunity. And good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is well, and really look forward to have this session together with Christian and Juliana and Cindy. Like what Cindy mentioned, digital health now is a big opportunity for everyone. It is poised to reach like 100 billions market sizing by 2025. And today we want to share with you during the COVID time, this trend really accelerating. And I will introduce once again what is digital twin. And recently we also confirmed with FDA to work together on a digital thread project. So with that, I would like to share with you where we are, and also using the ventilator as an example to show you the power of digital twin from development to end to manufacturing, and even post-market surveillance. So let us start. Last time we also mentioned what is digital twin. It's actually a merge of virtual and also the real world, and where you can realize and optimize from a virtual world to a real world, but also feedback the performance data from the real world. And so you can continuously improve your product development over the time. And there we can see we have the digital twin products and digital twin performance. And once you really look into also the digital twin production, then you can really optimize the design and final production process to get the digital twin performance also. And here you can continuously automate and get into a better and optimization form. So with that, we actually show the situation with FDA. And during the COVID time, you can imagine all over the world, we got requests to support the acceleration of production of ventilator, normally not from the traditional medtech company. So we have some car company or even a consumer electronic company come forward to ask us to help. And here we do work with the manufacturer, and some of them are able to produce the ventilator in maybe 8 to 12 weeks time. And that's the power of digitalization and the digital thread that we just mentioned. And with FDA, they also see the opportunities using this example to see how they can support the digital twin manufacturing so that really see the digital thread, the digital data crossing from product production to performance. And they certainly want to encourage that. And here what we have seen is we see the opportunity that we can use digital twin to do modeling and simulation design. Also, sometimes during the COVID, we have supply chain problem. So we may be missing some parts, and we are able to do additive and generative part design to replace those missing parts, and easily doing the digital design transfer into the production line, and also have a production line simulation. And finally, most important is the closed loop quality that we can achieve together with the whole digital thread. And of course, some important element when we are able to digitalize this end-to-end process, then FDA is also interested whether we can digitalize the submission in the regulatory submission requirement. So these are certainly a very new way of working together with the regulator. So we will see now some real cases on how we do the product digital twin from electrical and mechanical collaboration, additive design and simulation, but we also apply the model-based systems engineering to also simulate the product performance before we go into the production. As we do the production, first we do the design transfer all digitally, and also based on the EBOM, we do the plan and process simulation. And finally, we can also simulate the performance and post-market surveillance with the closed loop quality. So let us look a little bit into how this looks like when we talk about the product digital twin. So first of all, we are able, with the data, very quickly look into what are the components of a ventilator. And with that, we can easily see how we need to assemble the different parts of it. And in some cases, as I mentioned, if we are missing some of the component due to supply chain, we will be able to redesign those components with additive manufacturing. And then afterwards, we have the PCB assembly for the electrical side. And you will see what are the parts that you will need to produce a ventilator digitally. And then we are able to create a product digital twin to verify the performance, because during the COVID, some of the company may change the battery or change the component of the device due to the supply chain concern. And here we are able to really go into the model-based system engineering from a system level, logical architecture level, and also the physical architecture level, combined with the software development. When we are able to put everything together, we are able to simulate what's the performance of this product without really producing it. And here we can set up the model. For example, here's the ventilator. We will set up the model to simulate how this ventilator, this virtual ventilator, will work with different patient or usage type. And then with this result, we of course can optimize our design of this product. And with this ventilator analysis, we can also come back to say, oh, we want to optimize different part of it. And here we can see the electrical CAD and the mechanical CAD design actually fall into same platform. And we are able to collaborate on this design for the PCB design. And these are all done with the product lifecycle management platform digitally. And you can see if there's any component conflict, any changes I need to make, and the multidisciplinary team can work very closely together to optimize the different layers of the design. And also very important is after we design these electrical components, and then we are able to perform also some testing so that we can make sure the EMI and EMC can pass, whether it's a magnetic testing or the heat testing and the radiation testing and so on. So with this, we can all test these virtually, digitally with the simulation. And as I mentioned, we also able to redesign. For in this case, we originally had 6 components of this connector. And here, because of we are running out of stock with the supply chain, we are able to say, okay, we can combine these together, and we are able to print it with additive manufacturing. And here we can also see how we can optimize the material by forming a better placement of those newly generated 3D printing components and go into the printing. But most important when you do new product introduction is the regulatory part of it. So here you have this digital platform where you can combine all the teams, the design together, do all the simulation testing. But most important is, did you get your electronic DHF, DMR ready? So here we are also able to using one platform to combine all the documents and also the change management from the user need, design planning, design input, output, and also the testing, verification and validation. And finally, you have your ventilator ready to do the design transfer. And now we are ready. The design product digital twin already complete. Now we go into the production, and we will see here how we can optimize our manufacturing plant process digitally. So first of all, we will be able to develop and also deliver our work instruction very detailed into the digital platform. For every components that the software need to produce. And then we are able to use this instruction together with the M-bomb and the E-bomb. So we put into the different components and into the system, and then now we are able to design the step-by-step process. Also, the build of process is activated into the digital platform. And here, the design transfer is complete. We can do a lot of accountability testing all digitally. So now, after this, we are able to design our shop floor and to really optimize what should be the plan put through, that we also ensure our team members can have a good social distancing, ensure the employee safety, while we have the best production line continuously having the high productivity. And based on that, we are now able to schedule and also execute and monitor our production line for the optimal efficiency. This we are able to put into the different components based on the simulation, and now we go into the final production line. With the production line, it is not the end of the story. We actually can do what we call a closed loop plant simulation. So we are able to use all the data to do a production replay, so that we can see, is there any production backlog that we need to consider and we need to optimize or change. And then we also can do a simulation if we have a new production condition or testing scenarios, so that we can continuously improve the fidelity. It is quite interesting. Many of our customers, I must say, during the COVID, we got a lot of requests for plant simulation, because some of the customer may increase the demand by 7 times, 8 times, and they want to see how they can optimize or increase their output with the same number of people and the same number of plants. And here we will be able to see a lot of production improvements. And also some of them are building new plants because of the new demand, increased demand. So this has been a very popular request from many of our customers to do the plant simulation, so that they can increase their throughput quite significantly in a very short period of time. So now we have the product digital twin, we have the production digital twin. Now you want to see what is the performance after we have the products into the market. And here we can actually fit in to continuously monitor the wheel time, ventilator performance, and continuously get insights or post-market surveillance that is required by the regulator. As you see here, we can get the production and product data. After the simulation, this is the real production data, and we can do the post-market analytics quite easily. And we can easily drill down to the different layer in the production. And also, we are able to remotely monitor our ventilator, our devices, and check the performance. For example, maybe this ventilator is inside a hospital. We will be able to see the asset performance real time. And also, if they need any repair, we are also able to do it remotely. So this can ensure that the device are working as optimal and as possible, and reduce all the downtime. So here, that's what we talk about the closed loop quality. So we are able to really do the defect identification, and also we can continuously change to implementation. So that's why after the manufacturing execution, we can keep the NCR report and also the copper management, but also we can continuously do the engineering change order, so that we continuously change our production line or even a certain design, so that we have a closed loop to continuously improve our quality. This is also something that FDA really like it, and we also talked with the regulator in China. They really want to emphasize the continuously improvement in design, but also manufacturing part of it. And we see this is the future with which is possible with digitalization. Oh, with that, somehow I have, with that, I think I will pass to Christian to talk about how we can use digital twin to go into in silico trial, which are oftentimes a very big, important part for new product introduction. Thank you, Christian.
All right, thank you, Virginia. Thank you very much. Let me go into the presentation mode here. And let's see, seems to be working on my end. Can you hear and see it? Yep.
Yep, no problem.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, APACMed and Siemens, Fresenius, and having me on board again, having us on board again. It's great to work with the team again. We had a lot of fun last year, same this year. And it's very exciting to see the changes over the year too, talking about digital twins, how they go and how they have evolved over the year. It's actually a lot of stuff has happened over the year, kind of out of necessity. Last year, I talked a lot about examples on simulation side of things, more on the design side of it again, and how simulation is supporting these efforts. And today, I'm going to dive a little deeper into the vision of in silico trials and how that translates and connects to digital twins. And again, wrap it up with a few examples. Quick introduction, maybe where I come from. Work for Thornton Tomasetti, a consulting firm that's mostly known for super mega tall buildings like Shanghai Towers, things like that, where we do a lot of analysis. But we have a focus put on life sciences now. We have a team in Santa Clara. You've seen my background, the office, even though I'm sitting in Germany today. But so it's it's all a Zoom world these days, anyways. It doesn't matter where you are. So with that, one more slide about Thornton Tomasetti, just to know where. So we're located in the US, and Santa Clara is, as I said, the home office for the life sciences, but it's a global company with 1,500 people and 120 people in the applied sciences group where we fit into it. And then the other practices you can see listed here, all the way from forensics to structural engineering, construction engineering. We also have a core studio where we develop specific tools, software tools, also on the life sciences side, that really help us to put the tools together that we use commercially, like Siemens tools, for specific tasks and workflows to make this whole idea of in silico and also digital twins something more just really that we can implement on the go with our clients. And that's where we're going now these days. So let's zoom in on the in silico vision. Unfortunately, I do need these reading glasses more and more these days, I realize. Let's zoom in on an eye chart I have here borrowed from the MDIC, the Medical Device Innovation Consortium, that I think is a really good starting point if you want to understand in silico trials. Left upper hand, you can see the circle of all the things that go into the clinical trials these days. So there's the animal portion, the benchtop, and the human trial side of things, all create evidence. And now there's the computational portion growing, and it's still fairly small in comparison, but it's on the rise, and that's why we focus on that. So I want to just highlight a few things. Obviously, all the methods have their advantages that were why they're all used. Some things you can only do with benchtops, others only on human trials. You know, evaluation, evolving harm is not a great thing with humans. It's not ethical. It's restricted with animals. Oh, you can do a lot on computers, obviously, right? Disease states also, you can do it greatly on a computer, not really great on animals. So a lot of pros and cons to really push more of the work to computer simulations and analysis. For example, cost is also relatively low in comparison, like very high for human trials. And also it can be fairly short and fast if you have the right tools and the know-how on how to do it, right? Let me go to the next slide and really talk more about in silico trials and clinical trials, combination of them. Let's look at an example of cost savings for a client from in silico clinical trials, right? So cost estimates are anywhere for medical devices, not talking about pharma at this point, where in silico is actually fairly long away already. For medical devices, be anywhere from $10 million to $100 million. Take somewhere around 5 years to carry it through. So you have time and cost, right? It's just kind of interchangeable anyways. And what are the opportunities really? So in silico clinical trials is not coming in, computer simulation is not going to replace any of the others. They're going to augment, support it, and maybe even educate them, right? How can I build a better cohort for my clinical trial after doing the simulation? How can I reduce my benchtop tests, animal tests after simulation with the help of simulation? How can I scale an animal test to a human scale, like from a monkey to a person? Can I use simulation to do those things? A lot of applications there. So that's why this piece of the pie for clinical trials for computers will grow. So we got the clinical trial support, or the computer side of it, the in silico side, and the virtual patient, which is kind of combined to be the in silico. So the opportunities are reduce the cost by reducing number of patients, or create artificial cohorts basically in this in silico environment, reduce the follow-up time, reduce the time to market. So that's that in a nutshell. So when you combine this in silico clinical trials with clinical trials, you need to have some building blocks, right? So number one is the modeling and simulation capabilities. And that's honestly our bread and butter. We use tools, they're commercial tools mostly, like from Siemens, to create mechanistic models, compare them or combine them with anatomical data. For example, if you do implant devices, create use and boundary conditions, and we need compute power. So these are the building blocks that we have. And this is really very much the same tool chain and workflow that you have just on the design side, right? Make better devices faster. Now you have to handle the data. Now that's the next step. You need to be able to track the data, connect the silos from R&D to clinical trials. So you can then take really that whole communication chain to the regulatories, which is the last building block, right? So you need to communicate early and often with the regulatories, be it the FDA or the equivalents in the other countries in the world. And you have to do very, very, high quality verification and validation, or uncertainty quantification. So verification of the computer code that it really produces what you programmed in, and the validation, for example, against benchtops or other experiments that your code gives the right results, right? And you develop best practices. So these three building blocks, if you put them together, right, now you have the environment to build in silico trials that support clinical trials. Here's just a little more detail on that building block that we spend most of the time on at the moment, because you have to walk before you run, right? So you need to build the expertise, go to experts, and often you find yourself maybe in a field where you say, well, I don't have the simulation expertise, I'll just drop it, right? Well, that's why we partner, for example, with Siemens. We're a global alliance partner that you can basically come to us, and then we do a technology transfer and get you up to speed and crack the tough nuts, the tough problems, right? And with that, now altogether, you can start designing these combined trials. You can use simulation to build the right cohort size that you need for the clinical trial, or also you can build a cohort size on a computer, not just based on anatomical data, but you can use artificially, or basically you can create your own cohort in a computational way that doesn't have to be all based on scans. It could be also created in another parametric ways. Those are certain technologies that we work on in-house, so we can basically accelerate that. So then with that, you can also computationally focus on disease types, race, gender, age, and so forth, and educate, train, collaborate with the clinical trial people. Of course, we iterate on that. Nothing's perfect the first time, but we're starting to get into the loop now. And as Virginia was saying, you basically have the whole digital twin chain all the way into the field data, bring that back and improve then your design cycle. So how do we do in silico trials? I'm basically going a little deeper in these cases that I just mentioned. To do the virtual product design, development, validation, as I said, these are the tools that we use. Hope you can see my mouse here in the discovery, ideation, and in the invention prototyping phase, right? Now we're moving into preclinical, clinical trials, regulatory decision-making, carry the data along. So very important, now we have to be clean and very organized to carry over this data, and then go into post-market monitoring. So these same toolkits that we use there, like deployment of a heart valve frame, or a brain aneurysm stent, diverter stent for neurological applications. These tool chains are the same ones here that we use in discovery, ideation, or prototyping, as well as in post-marketing, like forensics or root cause analysis, right? So now we just have to string them together and automate them and accelerate them, speed them up as well. And simulation can take its sweet time too when it's complex simulation models like here and brain aneurysm. So now we're working also, of course, on new technologies to accelerate the creation of the parametric anatomical data, scan data, and also the solver side as well. So if you have enough data and your simulation runs a long time, you can then create reduced order models, system models simply as well, to accelerate that, maybe using artificial intelligence, machine learning for that. So these are the things that we need to develop, that we're developing to walk before we run, right? At the same time, we're looking into the data side as well. So today, a lot of the data, simulation data specifically, are very piecemeal. You got an expert engineer, puts this data together, needs to well document it, and often it's not coherent. We do a lot of data duplication. I'm definitely guilty of that in my past history when I was still running analysis myself. Let's make another copy there to be safe. A dangerous path to go down. So what we do there is we give guidance on the tool strategy and the implementation across the organization, so that tomorrow we have very managed data and processes, right? So all these tools that are available now need to be used properly, right? You need to have fail-safe mechanisms, traceability, very, very important. You need to go to your regulatories, trace every change, every modification, your design iterations, your simulation results, right? And then enable with that also simulation, standardization, and automation, so these processes can run fast and efficient. And lastly, so now we're also getting into regulatory support, working with the clients, working with the regulators, working with even clinicians to bring maybe data or these simulation technologies into the clinical arena at some point. But back to in silico trials. For the regulatory support here, so we work closely with the ASME VinV40. We have several members there, as a lot of software vendors as well, and medical device makers all came together, write the VinV40 guidelines. And you need to have to gain a really good understanding of these guidelines to do their verification, validation, and UQ properly, right? There's also the FDA modeling guidance out there, and of course, a lot of people have to deal with the MDR transition, where all these regulatory questions come up. And here's a nice example of a stent that gets developed here. We have the device, the delivery system, and when you would in detail go through it, it's kind of an eye chart, it's hard to read, but if you would go through here, you can say there's simulation you can do in the migration. You can do some in the patient simulation, definitely in fracture, but endo leaks as well. You could do some simulation, but maybe on the fracture, you can rely completely on the simulation, and on a leak, you might not be able to do that as much. So this is where the expertise from all these three elements comes together. You bring the data, you bring the simulation, and you understand the medical device design process to say, okay, we cannot use simulation to replace, but to augment, and in some cases, we can maybe eventually drop some of the clinical trials or bench tests altogether. So my last slide on the vision, and I have a few more on the examples before we go to Q&A, is where is this all going, right? Where are we today? So we've done consulting services, design development, developed beautiful software, and today we are really on the edge here, implementing digital evidence generation for in silico and clinical. Right? We use simulation, AI, imaging libraries for creation of population studies, and so forth. So we're driving this adoption and starting to enable these combined trials. So this is all good business, it's great. And what's happening now too is that there's more and more tools out there, software as a medical device, that go into the clinical environment. And the beauty of that, one side of it, is the workflows and the tool chains that we use are very much, I wouldn't say the same, but very, very similar, often from image to simulation. And but you have to deal with much more data, the EHR records and things like that. But at the end of the day, it will come soon, I believe, is that we will get into clinical treatment planning. And then after that, in a phase B, I would call it, we will get to clinical diagnostics, prediction of outcome and disease progression. And there's some studies out there. We also work with some smaller companies in this arena already, but I believe strongly this is all going to be driven by the adoption of these technologies up here on the medical device design side, and then implementing those further down the road. And at the end of the day, maybe in my lifetime, I will see how it's going to support the implementation of even value-based healthcare, right? What you can measure, what you can track through simulations, through data management. If you measure it, you can basically improve on it and implement the value-based healthcare side. Just 3 or 4 more slides on some case studies where we're doing this in silico trials. Here's a drug injection on a in the spine. I'll get to that example in a second. So here's an example we did at the time back when I was at Siemens, hemodialysis catheter optimization. It was a really nice example because it shows you how you walk before you run. So we did an optimization on a catheter where we optimized the slots here where the blood gets exchanged for this hemodialysis process. And so we ran 500 designs for an optimization to minimize basically the flow separation, hemolysis, the blood damage that occurs when you pump the blood through those sharp cornered edges and so forth, and depending on geometry and flow speed and so forth. So that's wonderful. That's a design side of things, right? But what you did then basically was, well, why don't we use different anatomical data? So we got scan data from our partners and now implanted that devices. But that's not the end of it. You can run that with 100 different parameters and positioning and so forth. But it's not just the anatomy, it's also the use case, right? It's the use scenario. How deep does the catheter get pushed in? So now you start varying the locations in the blood vessel when the catheter gets put in there. So many cases, and very quickly you learn what is the zone I need to be in where these are realistic areas of application. So very good example of how we built up the technology to a level where we can now say we can do an in silico trial on it. Another example is a heart valve FSI. That's a fluid structure interaction model. So you solve for the structural side, but also for the fluid side, and they work together. These guys, we used Siemens Darcesium Plus and Abacus, very popular in the industry. And it's I guess it's the creme de la creme of the tough problems in medical devices. Solving a heart problem is the valve is flapping around, flow is going in and out. It's very complex. So we're very excited that we were able to solve this. And with Siemens last year, we also did a webinar on that. But in this case, we want to understand this from a more of a parametric side perspective. So at this point, we didn't do any anatomical data, but just created different parameters, parametric, I'd say, simplifications of anatomies around that. So we can really understand all the flow features, how they interact. And the next step then would be to select, down select basically anatomical features that really then represent populations or cohorts of that, right? Here's some output results of that. Again, you see how the valves open. It's pretty complex thing that's happening here. And just to wrap it up, what you're looking here is we want to understand where the flow is recirculating again, right, in the wake of an object. So where plaque could build up, and then you have plaque build up, and then eventually it breaks off, and you might end up in a stroke. We're looking at the skewed leaflet, hemodynamic loading, so the flow curvature and things like that, and optimize the device for that. Or in this case, it's really just looking at an implant, but then it would, of course, then be replaced by an artificial heart. Then the dry part of it, of course, beautiful simulation is running. We also need to do the VNV40. I just talked about it in depth, so I don't want to repeat myself, but there is a lot to vary there, to understand the anatomic variations, boundary conditions, and then you really assess your metrics that you need to have when you go to the regulatory. So you understand your question of interest, your context of use, and then do your model risk assessment and so forth. Follow those steps properly. It's all nicely described. And other sensitivities that we need to analyze for computational modeling. Anyways, last slide, just wanted to touch on that. A new domain we're progressing into with our partner in vitro, a Konica Minolta company. So they do a lot of clinical trial support with the scanning technologies they have, a lot of scanners. So they would run these models for all sort of from cancer treatments to drug delivery, for animal tests and so forth, and human tests. And now he's helping that support that to in silico trials on spinal implants. Now that's a very complex anatomy. So we're still working on that, have run a few models now. The drug delivery process itself from epidural is amazingly complex, how the drug gets pumped through the cerebral spinal fluid, and which is pulsatile. Just saying, well, we're going into new boundaries here, pushing new limits on complexity. Very exciting field to be in. So that's how we now going to start to see how we work with drug delivery and also go into the pharma space with that. With these very same work flows and technology. One last slide, just again iterating where we put our focus. and our expertise on the left-hand side here. A lot of years of experience in the domains. And more important for me here is to show really where the focus for us is right now. As I said, we work on medical devices, cardiovascular, mostly at this point, in neuro, but of course there's orthopedic applications. And if you just translate it in your head, if you're from a different domain, then you can definitely, I think, make that jump and see how that works for your devices, your domain, your industry that you work in. And of course, the next step is then drug delivery devices and pharmaceuticals, and then direct pharmaceuticals eventually down the road. Great. If you have any questions, information will be available for you through APACMed or it's here on the screen. I think the webinar is also going to be recorded. And with that, I want to give it back to Juliana, actually to Virginia, I believe. She has a few more exciting slides to share. And I'll mute myself.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. I think it's really exciting to see how you can save the time and cost with the in silico trial, and also you are able to manage all your simulation in silico data onto the product lifecycle management platform like Teamcenter. But it doesn't matter whether you're a big or small company, and that's really the beauty to support your new product introduction. I recently moved to Siemens Healthineers and had the digitalization part of the business. So I'm really excited today to also talk about digital twin of the patients, which is something always close to my heart. And yes, we are now able to do a digital twin of the patient, meaning we are able to simulate also the different part of patients, and also we can use a lot of AI to really look into the scan data and then support the treatment options, like what Christian just mentioned as the future pathway, that we can do an AI pathway for different treatment to really accelerate the decision making or support or augment the decision making of the physicians. And here we also can see that this is one example with our heart, and then we do see that in the future, or not only in the future. I cannot click it. I realize, Christian, maybe you need to click it for the next slide. Thank you.
Let's play the movie again. It's really fascinating. Yeah, I'm in control. Maybe go to the next slide.
Yes, what's the benefit of digital twin of the patient? And presently, of course, we can even do 3D or 4D modelings, and with virtual reality, so we can do a cinematic rendering. You can use it to educate the staff and also improve the patient's education. And also we see that in the future, we can assist the surgeon to design the surgical strategy, because they see what's really going on with the patient with the scan data, and certainly increase the precision of the surgical procedures also. So there are lots of potential with digital twin of patients. Then I pass to Juliana. Maybe she has some add-on this part. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian and Virginia. I also love seeing all your videos, because to me, I'm like seeing it in real time, what the digital twin looks like. Yeah, I think just to add on to the patient part, I think it's always, this is like what Christian was also saying before, this is actually the most difficult part. And probably the part that if digitalization really does accelerate, it will really transform that area where we basically drive digital evidence generation, which I haven't really seen it yet. Because evidence generation in general, it's also very difficult already in person. But this is why I really do believe that the digital twin, if we can get a avatar of a virtual patient as a and treat it just like a patient in a clinical trial, it will be pretty fascinating to use that type of data for evidence generation. And then, so I guess now we will open the floor to see if there's any questions. Again, just like last year, I will always start off with some of mine. I guess ladies first with Virginia. So because both of you talked a lot about basically in the manufacturing process and in the simulation process, how digital twin can be used. And then I guess, Virginia, what would be your recommendation of like, how do we actually start utilizing digital twin in our daily work?
Yes, I think it depends, of course, what is the company or the market sizing, and they will start differently. However, if you are from the R&D side, or you are a startup, it is really possible to use the digitalization, and I will certainly recommend that, because they can use the platform to help them with the regulatory submission, and also save a lot of time and cost to go to markets, because oftentimes the registration is the key milestone for many investors. And here we can see the simulation can help them, and also the PLM or ALM platform can help them to go through the regulatory very quickly. And then for the bigger manufacturer, of course, they may want to start with the manufacturing side. So that's where they can improve the quality quite dramatically. So I think along the line of the digital twins, it depends on where you are. And then there will always be an easy starting point. Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah. So I just see in the chat box, there is a question for you, Virginia. I'm just going to follow it on since we started with you. Christian, I'm not forgetting you. You will have your turn. So
I think I talked enough already.
So this is a question from Lori. Is there a focus for the digitalization effort at Health and Air, for example, AI image processing on CT scan, MRIs? Or is it more digitalization in the manufacturing process with simulation?
Okay, so we can separate two divisions within Siemens. And for the Siemens digital industry software side, which is our software team, and they are targeting on industry. So here they will be the team will be focusing on what we just see, the manufacturing and the design. However, we also have the Siemens Healthineers team, and their focus are the hospitals and the healthcare service providers, and also the patients. And here we are certainly on the digitalization of what you just mentioned, Laurie, is the AI imaging processing, really integrating the CT scan, MRI, and then support the treatment pathway to the physicians. And also there are lots of this kind of digitalization with Siemens Healthineers team. And certainly I just talked to Cindy, maybe we can have a next session to talk about this. And that really include the whole workflow of a hospital's digitalization, but also how we do a remote monitoring and care for patients anywhere. And we are really coming to the time that we can do healthcare anywhere, and also maybe the e-pharmacy and so on. So that will be very much on healthcare delivery, and also what we talk about, the value-based healthcare. So I'm excited to hopefully soon to share with you more details on this part of the digitalization.
Yeah, that is great. I'm always excited about these things as a huge nerd. So we actually got a very interesting question from the floor, and I think I will have it to the both of you. So how can digital twin initiatives be implemented in countries where the digital infrastructure is not up to the standards required yet?
Maybe I'd take a quick and easy shot at that and leave the difficult part to Virginia. So, I mean, I have really not thought about this before, but so the type of work we do with in silico and simulation, we really don't need much of an infrastructure for the basic things. You just need a good computer, and you can access them from anywhere in the world in there where you have internet. And then you can access licenses and all these. You just need the know-how and access to the software. And I almost think there might be an opportunity there to leapfrog and surpass other countries where they have other hurdles to overcome. Like in the US, the complexity of the infrastructure is really, really high, really, and really getting anything into the market and the business drivers and all this and that. And if you're in a country where maybe you're not that far along with digitalization, you have maybe a new opportunity. It's like, it reminds me of cell phones when they started to be used in Africa. where they didn't have to deal with the old overland wires, all this stuff. They just went right to the cell phone. So you can leapfrog all these old technology, don't need to invest in that anymore. You can right go to digitalization. That's just an opinion, and not even an educated one. It's just something I just
Yes, I think this is like Christian mentioned. I think this is a great question, and the good news is now the whole software industry are moving to SaaS model or cloud and so on. So it is really no longer necessary that you buy a lot of infrastructure in order to use these tools. And for example, Siemens just announced this year that we will move all of our software into a SaaS model, service as software as a service model. So meaning you are able, as long as you can get on the internet, actually you will be able to use this digitalization tool. And it's also not just for the big boys. And oftentimes people think, oh, this is just for the big boy. You can also just buy the license on a SaaS model. So that will really give everyone a lot of flexibility, but also accessibility without having a very heavy IT infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's also another question from the floor from Alex. I think also to both of you, I would try to do with this. Has FDA or other regulatory provided incentives to accelerate digital twin?
Okay, I would say they for FDA actually I don't know whether it's an incentive. I think it is an incentive because they in 2018 they actually implement a special pilot project that if a company is using a MES system, a manufacturing execution system, which is a digitalization of manufacturing process paperless, and here they will really waive the future audits, and there's something called case for quality program. You can check it out online, and then they did this pilot project. It is quite interesting. We also have a webinar on it. It's done with Everett Life Science, and here what they find out is FDA save money because they don't need to come and audit the manufacturing side. And the company like Everett Life Science also save a lot of money because they are able to prove that they use the digital twins of production, they have the quality. So I think that's where the regulator are moving into is the incentive is both sides are saving time and cost by adopting the digital twins. So I think that's where we are moving into. But maybe Christian, you can mention about the digital evidence side of FDA.
Yeah, so specifically on in silico as well, I wanted to comment that there is a lot of activity with the FDA. So, for example, we work on an enrichment trial where we basically do a submission based purely on simulation. So we're just partnering with others there, and which is very exciting. It totally means that the FDA is completely bought into that. So there's a lot of support. And also on the ASME VNV40 standards, actually, for 2 years, I think Tina Morrison from the FDA is very supportive of the simulation side of things. She was heading that organization actually to be really involved with that, and she also developed the FDA guidelines. So with the FDA, so definitely the FDA is fully behind that. They want to see this come sooner than later. Even started to train, I think, reviewers on to better understand simulation data. So they have a better understanding, and not slowing the process down by not understanding, but really making it accelerated. Yep.
Actually, I have a follow-up question, Christian. What about like MDR? Do you think in Europe they would pick up this? Because FDA tends to be a little bit faster in adopting these type of things. Do you see? How about Europe?
So we haven't. I mean, MDR is a bit harder for us to access because we're in the US, but we have worked with some clients now that all the changes just came through in May. So there's a lot of those devices who need to be reassessed, and so simulation can be very helpful for doing that. So, but there we go more through the clients. I mean, we're only so many people too, so starting over in Europe, that's in the future as well. But I think definitely that can really help that to smooth things out and make the transition faster, I would say. Good point.
Yeah, that's very good. So there's a question about value-based healthcare. To build up digital twins capability for a company to add value to value-based healthcare, are there any specific skill sets to be acquired? I let you start and then I might supplement.
Well, I'm going to be easy on that one. I think you need a lot of skill to get that to work exactly. You need to understand every component of the chain that we were just basically, and Virginia was discussing, and I dove a little deep on the simulation side. I would not sell any of that as really easy or simple. Yes, you need to definitely invest in that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can supplement a little bit on that. I think for the simulation part, what Christian and Virginia talked about, you don't need a huge amount of data, but value-based healthcare, I would argue, is on the opposite end, where
Yes.
you need a huge amount of data because, first of all, you need to define what value is in whatever healthcare area that you're in. And generally, what I've seen is they use patient outcomes, mortality, hospitalization. It sounds easy, but collecting data to show that you're reducing mortality or reducing hospitalization is extremely difficult. And if you use your values-based contracts are on these two parameters, it's not easy to establish at all. So I completely agree with Christian where you have to understand the entire health system that you're in, understand the disease area, what is the primary patient outcomes that is most applicable to everyone in the health system chain, developed a evidence that you show you can deliver those values, and then continuously monitors those data points. Yeah, I must say this is the holy grail if we can ever get to it. But yeah, but it would
So I
really
put
be
it
the
on the
holy
bottom of
grail.
my slide. Like that's
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I also see that, for example, with Siemens Healthineers, we have like eHealth platform and we have MyCare for the remote monitoring of patients. I do feel in the future, as this types of platform being more popular in the hospital settings or with the healthcare provider, we will be able to collect those data, because data is always a difficult part, like what Juliana mentioned. So I do feel as we accelerate the digitalization for the healthcare service provider, we will able to achieve that. So yes, we need to work together on this one.
Yes. And then now I'm going to go back to some of my questions. I'm going to ask Christian a more specific one. So on the spinal drug delivery example, it looks very fancy, but also complicated. How long does it take to set up such a model from scan to simulation? Like, what is the process involved in order to do this?
Yeah, without getting too technical, I mean, we just got into this new domain, and we first just run a few models, and I can tell you, when you start out, yeah, even us as experts, it takes us probably a good 3-4 days to really get from a scan to a model they can do a simulation on. Then developing that simulation model on the CFD side and FSI side, it's been probably a few weeks to just get it to the point where you want it. But then the beauty about simulation is once you have one model run, you spit in the next geometry and you run it again and hands off, and hopefully it's going to run. It doesn't usually work that way. It's going to have some more patching up to do. That's why you have the experts doing it. But then so that you have basically this preparation time. But down the road, we think we can do more simplifications of the scans that really then represent the features that are essential. So there's some intelligence being put in, so we don't have to run all that segmentation of image all the way. And also now we're working with some partners who use AI, machine learning, to auto segment that. So once you have, unfortunately, you have to do probably 100 spines before the AI is smart enough to auto segment it. But the technology is definitely getting there. It's been done on the hearts and knees, where you just lean back and it does it. And same thing on the simulation side. Problem is these models really take a long time to simulate, because now I don't want to go deep into the fluid dynamics there, but you have to dissolve the time scales for the recirculation flows and blah, blah. But that's where the AI machine learning portion comes in. Once you have enough data that you can train on, you can basically create a reduced order model. Doesn't have to be AI machine learning, it can be other types of reduced order models, system models and other things. And then you can accelerate that too. And it's almost like creating a library that it's a lookup table. So there's ways to accelerate that, but the first path is hard. I would say it's not easy. I mean, I would say if we did some knee implants or spinal things with just structural analysis a while ago, and there was just more, I would say more, I wouldn't say knowledge, maybe yes, knowledge as well, but the workflows were already smoothed out. So there you can go quick, and in a few days you got something. But it depends on the problem, and the body is very, very complex, and every element has its own challenges. So,
but it looks very cool on screen.
It does, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I will go back to a little bit about the FDA and the regulatory side. So we've seen that like FDA seems to be more friendly with it. I guess this question is to Virginia. Like in general, when you work with your clients, how have you seen digital twin support your clients in regulatory approval and ultimately for product launch?
Yeah, I think it's been very important because not only approval, but also now more and more regulators are requesting UDI and post-market surveillance. And I think for the new product introduction, because you see the digital twins, everything is captured electronically, really from your user needs to all your documentation, whether it's MDR, MHR, and technical files that you need for FDA or MDR or even NMPA. So these are all captured electronically, and it's all updated and signed and with the electronic signature. So these are very important that you don't have anything, everything is within one, we call the center of truth. So really everything is in one data set, and then you can always submit, and if there's to any country that you require the different documentation. And it is really important that the change management part is always captured accordingly. And then also into the production, it's the future, like China is implementing UDI, and it is also can capture with all the post-market surveillance data now needed with MDR that you need to submit. And these are all electronic data. And oftentimes, I remember when I worked in Germany, whenever FDA or Korea regulator come, and we will shut down our factory for 2 weeks just to look into the files. This will not happen anymore. You just can draw in the right data anytime that you need. It's a real-time data. So I think that's the beauty of digitalization. Accelerates your introduction, but also make sure you maintain the document in an ongoing basis.
Yeah, definitely. I even see it like within my company too. Like having a database of truth is very, very important. Yeah. So Cindy, I just want to check with you with the time, because like, you know, good times always fly by, and I just realized it's past 10 already.
Yeah, so maybe we can close. So I don't know if you have a last sentence or anything last to share, and we can close just after that.
Yeah, I guess I'll give it to Christian and Virginia. Like any lasting comments to the audience?
Okay, from my side, I really see the digitalize your future is now a really exciting time that we are in, and there's so many possibilities. Certainly encourage everyone to start your journey.
Can't add much to it. I just want to thank everybody again for their time, but I think Virginia just said it perfectly. It's time to act now. I missed the train. So, and I'm also happy that we were able to connect what we presented last year, this year again, and to actually see a lot of progress within 1 year. I don't know what the impact of COVID really was on that, but maybe that we all get more time at home to think about these things and implement them. But I definitely see a huge difference from 1 year to another. So, and that's exciting. So.
Yep, I'm definitely looking forward to see a digital twin of myself.
Will be a very healthy one.
I hope so. All right. Yeah. Thank
Some
you,
things you
Christian.
can't
Thank
clone
you,
and copy. It's
Virginia.
unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Perfect.
everybody.
Thank you,
Yeah, thank you
everybody,
to the three of
for
you. So it was
joining.
a really great,
Yeah.
great session, and always happy to work with you. And thank you to all our attendees. Thank you
Yeah.
very much,
Thank
and
Thank you,
you.
have a
Cindy.
great day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Cindy.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.